Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Lisa Hutchinson, and I'm based in Richmond, Virginia. I have a business called Top Stitch Mending, and I mend clothing with the goal of keeping it out of the landfill. So just serving my community, mostly locally, and some occasionally people will mail items into me if it's a family heirloom. But my focus is on the back end of after people have done purchasing, or if they want to limit and not buy anything and keep everything they've already have going in their closet a lot longer. And then I teach people to sew so that they can repair for themselves.
And then Sydney, if you want to go next, you can.
Cool. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am a personal stylist. I'm also based here in Richmond, Virginia. And as a personal stylist, I help people really figure out what their style is. So it involves a lot of clothes. And my main focus is really helping people understand why they're shopping and how to shop in a way that is going to create a closet that is sustainable, it's timeless, it's not just going to be something that they turn over every season.
Alice, if you want to.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice. I'm I'm American, but I'm based in London. I've been living here for about 10 years and have worked in luxury fashion for 10 years. It's gone by so quickly. Feels like forever, and also been a blink in the eye. And I also have kind of been thinking about starting a small business of resale clothing and also teaching workshops on mending and caring for your clothes, partly inspired by my experiences in working in fashion, and kind of my lifelong commitment to trying to make fashion and fashion culture more sustainable.
And Shanna, if you want to end us off, we can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shanna. I'm a Richmond-based content creator, and I see two people here that I'm familiar with their faces around town. And I have a blog, and it is just really all about teaching people how to thrift and incorporate more thrifting into their lifestyle and thrifting pieces into their wardrobe.
Okay, perfect. So I guess just kind of like outlining how we can go about like all the different questions that we have planned for you guys. I'm just gonna like ask a quick question, and then whoever like wants to respond can speak first, and then whoever like else has anything to say about that question, because a lot of the questions are designed for all of you guys, but we also have specific ones based on your guys' specific line of work and things like that. So we're just gonna start with something general, but like there's a lot of different meanings of sustainable fashion for different types of people and like what that actually means. So we just wanted to know, like, what does sustainable fashion mean to you, and what problems does sustainable fashion in general try to combat? And this includes things like greenwashing. So whoever wants to respond can go first, and then we can just go like until everyone like gets a chance to say what they want to say.
I'm happy to kick off. Sustainable fashion for me is a tricky one because, like you said, there are a lot of different ways that you can kind of describe or encapsulate sustainable fashion, whether it is like low impact fabric, or whether it is handmade clothes, or upcycled, recycled. So it's kind of a catch-all term for those things. I think for me personally, sustainable fashion is kind of respect for clothing. So if you do love something and you want to buy new, that's absolutely fine. But trying to, get the most out of your clothing and to respect whoever has made it, and respect the garment in and of itself. And I think, touching on greenwashing, it's become a very big buzzword in the industry, and there are a lot of brands that kind of take advantage of the unregulatedness of sustainable fashion and how hot that topic is. And I think we can kind of talk about this later as well, but there is a move to regulate it a bit more. But I think also just having lots of conversations about all of the various ways that fashion can be sustainable without depriving anyone or completely changing our habits, because that in and of itself is also unsustainable.
Yeah, and just for like anyone who like is kind of like confused about what greenwashing is, it's kind of a PR marketing tactic that a lot of famous companies use to make it appear as though their products and what they're selling is environmentally responsible when it's not. Like I watched a documentary with like Hassan Minhaj on like his show on Netflix about that. And so it's just like something that you see like, oh, we're like a green brand, but like a lot of the times they're actually not, especially for super big corporations. But I think Lisa, you had your mic on, so feel free to.
I was thinking when Alice said like it's a respect for your clothing is for me personally, it is sustainable fashion is the clothes we already have in our closet. But I also think it is, you know, an all-encompassing term and we can go in steps. So I kind of like categorize it, like start with what you've got, try to keep that as long as you can. And by that, just meaning like the ways you respect and care for it. So like finding ways to wash less and wash your clothes on cold and delicate, and then learning like a few hand stitches to repair and kind of keep them in circulation longer. And then like the next step is like, okay, I don't have what I need in my closet, which Sydney can speak more on this, the process of that when you come to that. And so can Shanna. They are like masters at the where to get and what to get and in what budget. And so just like stepping to that, like, can we borrow from a friend or a family member? And then like, is it something I can find secondhand, and just kind of building out, because it's always going to be available to you new. And that's the shortcut. But what are the things you can approach before even finding out which brand is sustainable? There are some steps you can take before that.
Respect is such a great word, because for me, I think sustainable fashion is really that every piece I bring into my closet has a purpose and has an intention, and I'm intending to keep it for the long haul. So whether I'm buying something from the thrift store or a consignment store, or I am buying it new, there is that respect around this piece coming with me, and that I will fix it. I will take care of it. I've taken like socks to Lisa to have her fix them for me, and learned how to darn my own socks, which I don't do as often as I should, but I do know how. And so it's just that intentionality around bringing whatever in that I'm doing at whatever price point.
Yes, to what everybody else is saying. I think we all have the same base definition of what sustainability means to us. And mine is no different from anyone else. It's just being really intentional about what I'm bringing into my closet, and making sure if it is a piece that's going to be in my closet, taking care of it until it absolutely cannot be taken care of anymore. And then taking that piece and not throwing it away, but finding someone who may be able to use it, may be able to repurpose it. I had many years ago, I had a dress that I bought from a vintage shop, and I didn't want to wear it anymore. And instead of donating it or selling it, I gave it to a friend of mine who took it apart. She's an amazing seamstress, and reworked it and turned it into a completely different piece. So not just what I do with the items in my closet, but who can I give this to then give this piece further longevity.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that kind of leads straight into our second question about what brought each of you specifically to this field. Because like everyone has like different perspectives on how they got into like whatever field that they work in. So we kind of wanted to ask you, how is sustainable fashion and dressing sustainably, shopping for clothes sustainably, all of that, how has that become a part of your life in your work, and how did you get brought into this like super relevant topic and issue as part of your life? So I guess for this question, we can start off with Sydney, and then whoever else wants to go on after that.
Cool. So I think I got into sustainable fashion from thrifting, just because it was cool and fun and different. And I really appreciated finding things that not everybody else was wearing. And so I really got to develop my own personal style through kind of this experimentation. And so that came long before I ever thought about sustainable, because even thrift store shopping can be a cycle that is not sustainable if you're just purchasing and then getting rid of, purchasing and getting rid of, and not thinking about that. And so that really kind of kicked off my interest in styling. And I had a blog where essentially was just talking about sustainable secondhand outfits in Richmond like 10 years ago, and learned about styling and really just fell into personal styling. And so I really wanted to kind of translate timeless wardrobes, sustainable wardrobes, just the ethos of how you care for your wardrobes in my work with clients. And so that has shifted and like evolved over the years as my understanding of sustainable fashion has also evolved. And so I think how I work with clients now and my approach now is definitely even different from a couple years ago in brands that I will look for and how I teach my clients to think about their closet and creating outfits and shopping, and really trying to change that for them in the work that I do.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to pop in after.
For me, it was a lot of different things kind of leading up to what now I guess we call sustainable fashion. I grew up, I loved vintage shopping, going to vintage stores when I was really young, and I couldn't afford anything in there. And that's when my mom kind of was like, well, I can teach you to sew. You can try to make those pants that you want to buy, and ended up studying fashion design at Drexel University. And I was in school and I, couldn't buy fabrics. And so I was buying secondhand fabrics, and I was reusing as much as I could, just because of a combination of my personal finances. And I worked directly with fashion companies and interned in New York, and was going in and out of sweatshops and seeing directly like how that works and the impact on the workers. And knew like, well, I don't want to work with a company like that. And if that exists, even just, a company located in New York using a sweatshop in New York, we usually tend to think, oh, those are overseas, or the mistreatment of workers is always not where we are, but it's everywhere. And having exposure to that at a young age and thinking, what do I do? And instead of completely shutting down, which at moments, even now, I feel like occasionally that this is impossible, just trying to like do what I could, which was upcycle. And then my personal progression was I went from making clothes out of secondhand fabric to only upcycling to now repairing, because even making clothes out of recycled fabric was creating too much waste. So I wanted to attempt a fully circular loop on a very tiny scale. And so I am attempting zero waste, using everything from past repairs for future. But my main focus is on the back end of, Shanna touched on it, is what happens after your clothes. So I'm less in the know about current up-to-date brands, because I've just stopped shopping as a personal choice in the mainstream many years ago. So I'm out of the loop occasionally on like the biggest, newest fast fashion brand, but more concerned about where do your clothes go, what's happening to them when they're breaking down, and where do they go after, and the impact of that on the environment, rather than the production side, because I feel like more people discuss the production side than the afterlife.
Yeah, that's really interesting, like your personal choice to stay away from the big mainstream shopping that like everyone would see on like their ads on their phone and things like that. Like they're really tempting, the ads that they're like, oh, get like 5 pieces of clothing for like $1. And then that's like where like majority of people, like majority of my generation, most of us like shop from those types of places.
Well, I'll just say it was not easy. Like me saying like, oh, I don't do that. It was not, I was a shopper. I love clothes. I studied fashion design. I am in, it wasn't easy and it took a long time, but it's just like resetting any habit of like, it's
Mhm.
hard at first, and then you pick your 5 favorite shops, and maybe they're going to be secondhand and vintage, and then maybe you narrow down how often you go, and kind of, but yeah, with technology, it makes it very hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Shayna, if you want to pop in, and then Alice after that.
I didn't know what I was doing was sustainable. It wasn't even like a thing back when I started. I grew up with my brother and sister, and we only got clothes like 3 or 4 times a year. If you were from a certain generation, you remember getting your school clothes, clothes for Christmas, clothes for summer break, hand-me-downs, and that was it. And I didn't know that that was being sustainable. That was just what it was. Now there was a time where I was a massive shopper and bought a lot of things and started thrifting in college. I didn't know what thrift stores were until college and fell in love with that. And I just like going hunting and finding things that other people weren't wearing, like Sydney said. I didn't know that was sustainable until someone pointed that out to me. It's like, oh, so you like sustainable fashion? I'm like, I don't know, whatever. Okay, that's what it is, I guess. But that wasn't until like maybe 5 years ago. So I didn't know how I grew up and what I was doing was considered sustainable. That's just what I always did.
I feel like I have had a similar kind of pathway to sustainable fashion as everyone else. I am the youngest child, so got all of the hand-me-downs like Shanna and Kit as a kid, and was thrifting all throughout high school and college because that was really cool and fun, and the thrill of the hunt is always so exciting. And I knew I wanted to go into fashion. I also studied fashion design. I knew I wanted to go into fashion ever since I was a kid, really. And luxury fashion always really intrigued me. Partly because of the bespokeness and the intentionality to it, and the kind of handmade aspects and heritage. I always kind of viewed luxury fashion as an art form, and I wanted to be involved in that. And there are different levels of luxury fashion. So there's kind of the haute couture, which is the more bespoke, very delicate handwork, that kind of stuff. And then there is this kind of luxury fashion bracket, which is the more kind of high end, but still quite wearable in your everyday life. And so that's kind of the bracket that I have been working in. And I think working in that industry and seeing, it's similar to Lisa, kind of seeing not necessarily the sweatshops, but seeing the process. I work in production, so seeing the process of how clothes are made, and just in general, new clothing is not sustainable at all. Like consumption as a thing is not sustainable. But in luxury fashion, it is kind of amped up a bit. I mean, the carbon footprint of some of the stuff that I was working on was absolutely insane. We would buy fabric that was produced in Italy, but most likely woven in China or India, and then printed or dyed in Italy, and then sent to India to be hand embroidered, and then sent back to the UK to be made. And then the finished garments were then sent to clients all over the world who were selling them. So it was just like craziness. I still can't wrap my head around that process. And so part of my mission is to try and change it from within. Because I work in production and as a product developer, I really try to make an effort to steer a lot of our decisions into being more sustainable. So trying to produce fabric more locally. There is a fairly big historical industry in the UK of fabric production. And there are lots of manufacturers here. So trying to keep that as kind of local as possible is something that I really push for in my everyday work. And also trying to move all of our materials into, like, packing materials into more sustainable options. And I'm really lucky to work for a brand that has sustainability as kind of a pillar in our core beliefs. And we have a CSR department, so a corporate and social responsibility department, and I work pretty closely with them. We audit every single factory that we work with to make sure that they are meeting sustainability and ethical standards. And we're working as a whole team to try and lessen our environmental impact as well. So I'm very lucky to be supported in that way, but also there's always more that you can do. And like I said, creating clothes from scratch is not sustainable. So there's an element that it will never get there. But, you know, trying to do as much as you can from the belly of the beast is kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how, like, for all four of you, like thrifting and just like doing that as kids or like doing that in college kind of brought all of you towards like the same like overall field of work. But it's also interesting how you were talking about how like luxury fashions, they're like, oh, like made in Paris, or like we're based in Paris, but it's actually like stuff going from all over the world that's coming together to just bring one tiny, like super expensive piece of clothing. Yeah, Lisa.
Say one thing I wanted to add about that. I love that Alice broke down where everything was getting sent. And as I was cringing, I was also thinking that does happen on a lower level with a t-shirt, just in case somebody in the attending today doesn't have any kind of background in production, is like the luxury fashion one. I feel like the steps you were naming is like so many, and also just know that a t-shirt that is being sold for $5 to $10 is also going to have already visited probably in a lot of cases 2 to 3 countries. The fabric will be produced somewhere, and it's even possible for all the t-shirts to be cut in one country and finished in another, or have the majority finished in one and then like the hemming done in another, and then they can add another country on if the import tax is cheaper. And so they will actually just ship it through a country that, for example, if the t-shirt is ending in the US, that the US has a deal with for a lower import tax, and it'll make one more stop there just for the sheer fact that it can then be imported at a lower cost. So
there's another reason that sometimes that happens. There, legally, only 10% of the garment needs to be produced in a country to then be claimed that it is produced in that country. So sometimes factories will have like a headquarters in Italy or Portugal, but then the actual garments will be produced in a less savory place and then shipped back to the better country, and there'll be like a top stitching, or the labels will be sewn in, and that will be enough to claim that the garment is made in that specific country. So there are all of these kind of legal workarounds that happen, and this kind of again ties back to the greenwashing thing. There's so many loopholes and it's not regulated at all. But I do think that is being worked on. I know in the UK and in the EU there are some new regulations and standards that are being put in place about how you can claim what is and isn't sustainable. And instead of saying that this is just like a sustainable pair of jeans, you have to say this is made of 50% sustainable material. You just have to be more specific about it, which is great. So yeah, just wanted to add that bit in.
Yeah, that's like really interesting to like kind of think about it. Like, where are your clothes actually coming from? They're coming from the mall, but what's like the chain of events that led to them end up at the mall where you got it? And I guess that kind of leads right into our next question, where we just kind of wanted to know like what you guys have learned about the actual impacts on the environment of like, say, like just like buying new clothes from like these like big companies. Like, what effect does that actually have on the environment in like both like the short term? I know like Lisa, you work with like trying to keep stuff out of landfills and things like that by like mending clothes instead of just throwing them away. But like for all of you guys, like what is the actual impact of like not shopping sustainably on the environment. And I guess for this one, we can have Shayna, if you want to start, and then just go around.
Um, I honestly never knew until someone, pointed out, oh my gosh, you're sustainable. So of course I had to look this up and find out what they're talking about. I never realized the pressure that producing clothes puts on the environment. I don't think I ever really gave it a thought. Like I knew, you buy something and if you don't donate it, you throw it out. And, I've been 100% guilty of having a t-shirt that has a stain that I couldn't get out or a hole. I don't know how to sew. I'm not going to fix it. Just throwing it in the trash. And like, I knew like, oh God, it's going to landfill and that's bad. But the actual production of the clothes, I had no idea the environmental impact that had. I had no idea, you know, I thought if a piece of clothing was made and it said it was made here, that it was made here. To like find out, the whole, if everyone else was like shocked when they heard the multi-step process, like my mind was blown when I learned. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, hold on. It goes from here to here to here to here to here to be made. That's a lot of the impact that has on the environment. I never thought about it like that. That was sobering to find out, and that is what got I still shop fast fashion a little bit, but really backed off from that as much as I did before now. So yeah, that was sobering to find out.
All of the steps for new was wild. Like I had an idea of that, but didn't know the actual percent. But like everything also goes through all of those steps in the opposite direction once you get rid of it, which is also wild. So I recently read this book called Secondhand Travels in the Global Garage Sale. And it's not clothing specific, but it talks about like what happens when you donate stuff to Goodwill and they can't sell it. Where does it go? And that was mind blowing to me. And so, like Shanna said, like I never really thought about it before. And then sometimes when I have this information, I feel like paralyzed. Like I can't throw this away. Like, what am I going to do with it? Like, I will like cut t-shirts into rags, and like some of my rags are like full of holes and they don't even like wipe anymore. But I'm like, what do I do with it? So it's like a very wild thing when you start thinking about all of it, from purchasing to getting rid of. And one of the things that I try to come back to, or will tell my clients, like myself or like anybody, is trying to figure out like what are your biggest priorities when you're shopping or when you're getting rid of things to help make decisions. Like, is it because you want something made in the United States, or is it because you want something that you think or can trust that is paying fair wages, or you want something with eco practices, which hopefully you can research it and hopefully they're not greenwashing. And because it's very hard to like hit all of those things in like one go. And so with, Lisa being like, I don't shop anymore, like that's probably your best bet, but maybe not like practical for everybody, or like you don't want to get there yet, or like you can't or whatever. But yeah, I think the impacts are like crazy, and I don't even like know numbers, but I can just like read books like that and like get these evidences, and I'm just like, it's a lot to think about.
Sorry, just to jump on the back of that, again, I don't really have a lot of numbers off the top of my head, but the environmental impact is as wide and varied as the term sustainable fashion. There's all of the processing from the front end. There's all of the processing of fabric dyes and like water runoff, and cotton is one of the most water heavy plants and industries. So like jeans, I think it's like 700 gallons of water to make one pair of jeans. Yes, I got it right. And then all the carbon footprint of everything flying around. And I read an article, or half of an article the other day about, and I can't remember what the term is. It's something like recycling colonialism, or basically if you donate clothes to a thrift store and they can't sell it or whatever, then it often gets shipped to third world countries. And there are these massive landfills. I think there's one in Patagonia maybe, and there's one definitely in just outside of Accra in Ghana. And a lot of fast fashion is made from man-made fibers, and so it doesn't biodegrade. So there are these landfills just full of clothes, and they're not going anywhere, and no one really knows what to do with them. And so it's a major issue that is being slowly discussed at the moment. But I do think, the kind of intentionality and thinking about what to do with something when you no longer want it is probably the best way to start thinking about your own fashion consumption and what you can do to kind of eliminate as much waste as possible. Because I think, like everyone has touched on, it takes a very strong person to stop shopping. So I think whenever I talk to people about sustainable fashion and what things that people can do, stopping shopping isn't necessarily always the immediate next step, but I think at least educating yourself about what the life cycle is will help influence whatever decisions you make going forward.
Yeah, I agree. As I wouldn't say I don't shop, but as a limited shopper, it is the more you read and learn about the production process and the disposal of clothing, the more it will just influence you to make your own personal checklist. Somebody mentioned earlier, what are your priorities? There's so many avenues of sustainability, and almost no company, I don't know of a company that hits all of them. There are some small companies that are close, and like Tonley is really amazing, and they tick lots of the boxes, but you might go there and they might not be your style. Then what do you do? So there's a lot of factors to think about and check off. And I think the key is not to stop shopping, but definitely stop for a moment before you buy your next thing, and just make your checklist. Do I need this? Am I going to wear this all year or one time? If it's only one time, maybe I don't, because I know that potentially in the production, these things happened, and that I'm going to want to get rid of it after, and these things happen. And so it is, people will continue to produce as much as we continue to consume. So there is a, encouragement to like lower the consumption, whatever that is, right? Less than before. And then that lowers on the end of the back end of getting rid of. And Alice mentioned the landfill in Ghana, which is very, I guess famous maybe, or is getting visited and written about very often because it's one of the largest. And I think when we look at photos of something, it makes it a little more realistic. So I don't know if anybody is interested in looking on the back end, but when I hear landfill, I picture like a big dugout thing and it's being filled. So this is way beyond that. This is mountains. So it is mountains of like
actual mountain.
Yeah, of actual mountains. And like in any landfill, combustion can happen. So you were asking about the environmental impact. On the front end is, the dyes can be dumped in waterways, and just because we assume these things are regulated, most of them are not in that process. And then on the back end, a lot of these landfills are right next to and in and on communities. People are living next to them, in them, above them. They weren't landfills before, and the landfill spread onto their land. And with that much like nitrogen in anything, with food waste and clothing, there's combustion, and there are these huge fires that break out in these things. So, imagine a forest fire, but it's not, it's a trash fire, and it's out of control. It's putting smoke in the air. So it's the pollutants just from the the landfill being there. And then people actually lose their homes. It's not just, sorry, I'm getting emotional. It's not just, a lot of times we talk about the environment and then it's like, whoop, but with the environment, and when I use the word environment, you always have to think of the people in that environment. And it's usually people who didn't choose. It's never somebody who chose to be put in that situation. So just to remember, our purchasing and disposability impacts way more than just ourselves.
Yeah, thank you so much for feeling like you could be able to get emotional in front of all of us. It's totally okay. This issue is definitely like when you're thinking of like sustainable fashion, it's like you don't think about it like how it affects people, but it really does. So thank you for talking about that, and thank you for yeah, just thank you for that. But I noticed a lot of you guys like were talking about the impact of sustainable fashion on people. So we had like one question specifically for Shanna, but also for all of you guys. But an important piece like of this whole sustainable fashion combination is that tends to be lost among like people saying like shop secondhand, boycott fast fashion brands, is that sustainability doesn't equal equity. And that's something that you guys have already touched on in what you're talking about, because like marginalized communities such as like communities of color, low-income communities are often left out of the conversation entirely. Like you're saying, like there's people that are being affected by it that never had a choice about the practices that are going on and that are that are just considered trendy in society, like shopping from companies like Shein. So all of you, like, could you like explain more about what this inequity looks like and share some insight on like some marginalized groups that can be better included in the movement towards sustainable fashion? Shanna, if you want to start us off, and then you can just go through like that.
We first have to, all right, I'm going to ask you a question. When you think about sustainability, what is the first thing that automatically comes to mind? And what automatically comes to mind for a lot of people is shopping with brands who are sustainable. And that's great. If you have the income to support that, that's wonderful. But if you're talking about low income communities and marginalized communities, a lot of them don't. They don't have access to Everlanes or Doans or Saisons. They don't have the income to support purchasing from these particular brands. So for them, shopping secondhand is something that they've always done. Mending clothes is something that they've always done. Taking care of the garments that they have is something that they've always done. Shopping very limitedly throughout the year is something that they've always done. So we really need to reframe the conversation when we talk about sustainable in fashion, from shopping with sustainable brands to doing the best that you can, to letting people know that you are also sustainable if you buy a shirt from H&M and you keep that shirt for 5 years because you're not buying another shirt. It is okay if you take those pair of jeans and you what's big now, that split hem trend that's big. You have a pair of jeans you're going to get rid of and you just do a quick DIY and you wear those until the trend is over. Like, that is what we need to start pushing, instead of automatically pushing, if you want to be sustainable, you have to shop with Everlane or Madewell's new line. There's nothing wrong with Everlane or Madewell's new line. If you can do it, great. But if we want to put them into the conversation, if we want them to feel like that they can be a part of this movement as well, we have to be able to meet people where they are. And this movement does not do that, unfortunately. It does not address that. It actually demonizes these communities for not being able to buy things. If sustainability is inherently stopping overconsumption, that is an oxymoron to then blame the one community that does not overconsume because they are unable to overconsume and tell them you're not being sustainable. What do you mean? What are you talking about? How are they not? They're the pioneers of it, and they are the voices that are not heard. It aggravates me to absolutely no end. It's maddening.
There's another element of that as well, where you know, there are communities that have historically shopped in thrift stores and have done mending and stuff. And now that there's this kind of trend of sustainable fashion, then people who can afford to shop new and maybe make, you know, better choices of the brands that they're shopping with. But if that group of people starts shopping in the only place that marginalized communities can shop and taking away the pieces that they would normally get, you know, there's also a fair amount of, I think people like, there's the, like sizeism is a big thing in the fashion industry as well. And, you know, if people are shopping in, some people may not necessarily be able to shop in thrift stores or in certain places because they can't actually access the sizes that they need. And then there's an element of kind of resale Instagram stores or whatever, of people going to thrift stores and then upmarking them and selling them on. But again, that's taking away a resource from an underrepresented community. And that's also really unfair on those communities. And I think it's important to, you know, not to think about, if you are going to shop secondhand, where are you going? Why are you going there? And who else would be shopping there? And are you taking away a resource from them if you have the opportunity to use a different resource?
And something Shanna said that is just so true is that, like, we talked earlier that the word sustainability is a blanket statement that gets thrown all over everything. So sustainable is something you can maintain, right? Something that is maintainable. So if you talk about sustainability with the environment, it's different from being sustainable with yourself. And the most sustainable thing you can do as an individual is to buy within your budget. If you are, like Shanna mentioned, like tons of sustainable brands, which I can't name for you because I'm out of the loop, but also I've not been able to purchase from those. You know, I even now, like when I do selectively buy, I do go for secondhand if I can, or like Shanna said, if H&M has the thing I need that I'm like, oh, yep, classic black tank top, I'm going to keep this for 10 years, you know, then you go there. So also to remember in this process, which, you know, if you're diving into going in this direction, to not shame yourself and others, like Shanna said, it's not the point, and one thing doesn't work for everyone. And you also have to remember, we are learning from the people who already did this, and that's where it came from. We didn't invent this. So like, be good to yourself in the process of this. It's a lot of tough information that you're gonna dive into. And so be kind to yourself as you go through the process. You know, any little bit makes a difference, but buying a $400 raincoat when you can't pay your rent, not sustainable also.
Yeah, I mean, what these ladies said is just so on point. In my kind of personal thing, and what I teach my clients is just to buy the best quality that you can afford. And if that quality is Walmart, even though they may not have great practices, that's still fine for you with where you are. And to echo Lisa, as a whole, we shouldn't be shaming people, but you should also not shame yourself for doing that. And then putting the education and intention behind what you are wearing is incredibly important for where you fall on that spectrum.
Yeah, and something that you guys have touched on. Oh, Shanna, if you wanted to say something.
I also want to point out that if you are shopping with sustainable brands, but you are consuming as if you are shopping at a Shein, you're not being sustainable. When I see sustainable bloggers, and some, you know, everyone does whatever they want to do, I'm not here to like criticize, but when I see sustainable bloggers continue to blog about the new sustainable thing that they're buying, they're not being sustainable, dear. You're not being sustainable anymore, love, if you're continuing to buy. The point is to lessen our consumption, not ramp it up under the guise of, but I bought it from a sustainable brand. That's all. That.
And I'll just echo that from somebody who teaches people how to buy things and to shop for things, is that I think every piece fills a purposeful intention in your wardrobe. So like, you don't need 5 black t-shirts. You might need something with a V-neck, and you might need something with a scoop neck, and then you're done. That's it. We don't need a lot of them. And then you can probably fix them because Lisa can do it, or someone can teach you how.
Yeah, I feel like that's not something that like everyone thinks about when they're thinking about sustainable fashion. Like you were just saying, people are like, oh, I bought this from a sustainable brand, that means I'm sustainable. But like what all of you guys have been saying is that sustainable fashion doesn't mean buying sustainable clothes. It means making those clothes sustainable based on what you do with them, like by keeping them for a long time and stuff like that. That was just like really interesting to hear. And that's like that's not something that like I like even completely understood until you guys just started talking about it. And so I guess like one of like the really important questions that we wanted to ask you, that like you guys have already been addressing throughout like the entire like part of the panel, but it's like, how can the average person shop sustainably on a budget? You guys have been saying like it's not the same for everyone. Lisa just said like be kind to yourself. Each little thing that you do can make a difference in terms of like buying clothes. But I guess like for the everyday person, we just wanted to like see from your guys' perspective and like what you guys have been doing, how can people shop sustainably by like making an impact? It's just like it's a really big question that's like not that easy to answer because like everyone has a different situation. But that was just like one thing that I wanted to ask you guys, Sydney or Shayna or Alice or Lisa, if
I
anything.
just have a really quick
Yeah.
one. I just wanted to share this discovery, and I'm not sure if there is a similar thing in the States, but I've just discovered this app where it's kind of like a consignment store, but you're just renting out your clothes. So like anyone can just rent their clothes to anyone else. And it's just such a great concept to me. And I really hope that it takes off and more people are into it, because that is a very small thing that people can do to reduce their consumption and respect their clothes. And, you know, if you have an event or something, or you want the like cool new trendy piece, you can just rent it from someone. So maybe there's a similar thing in the States, but I'm definitely going to be trying it out soon. So just throwing that out there.
I used my Instagram randomly twice in the last year, and once was in the last year, once was pre-pandemic. I was in a wedding and I was just like, oh no, the non-shopper's worst nightmare. I'm gonna have to buy a dress in a color they're gonna tell me. And luckily they gave me a color range, and I just put on Instagram that I was looking for that, and I had complete strangers offering up to let me borrow from their closet. And I was like, the people are good. Like I love people and connecting with new people, but I was just like, wow, I was not expecting that. And then a second one was, I was like, I want to buy some sneakers. Does anybody have like a sustainable brand? And a friend of a friend was like, what size are you? And gave me, like, they're a runner, so they actually buy their sneakers like more frequently. They like sent me a pair of 8, picture of 8, and were like, do you want any of these? So also, it sounds crazy, but it's just like being out of the loop of shopping. Sometimes you forget like, oh, there's something else besides going straight to the store, and you might end up having to go to the store. But I don't know, with Instagram being so like heavily attended, it doesn't hurt to just ask, which is kind of like what Alice said. So like renting or borrowing from your friends even.
I used to, not as much anymore. When I would clean out my closet, take the clothes to like a Buffalo Exchange or Crossroads, or whatever it is, wherever you are, and sell them, get the store credit, and then save that for another time if I didn't see anything in the store that I wanted immediately. So I would just wait, come back every couple of months to see if they had something. And if they did, and it was something that I wanted, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and use my store credit and buy myself something new. That's always been my trick.
I keep a list on my phone of the things that I feel like I need that come from me looking in my closet and knowing like where the gaps are. And so, and I'm not a big shopper. If I do shop, I shop mostly secondhand for the majority of my wardrobe. And so I do love popping in and out of places and looking because I love clothes, but the list also helps keep me accountable to know, like, do I actually need this thing? Like, is this thing within my like color palette? So is it going to work with other things I have in my wardrobe, or is it just going to be the odd person out so I don't wear it? And is it going to end back up here at this store? So the list is really key. And I often sit on the list for quite a while before I make a purchase, because sometimes I'll have written something down and then it takes me 3 or 6 months. And then I go back and look at the list and I'm like, oh, I don't actually really need this. Like I thought I did in the moment. And if I just purchased it, I might have used it. But by waiting, I get to see like, I've been fine without the thing. And if I still really want it, then I can make like a concerted effort to find it secondhand or whatever the case is based on that thing. So I love a list.
Yeah, those tips are really helpful, especially like doing like things as easy as like a list on your phone. I feel like that can like just like a small thing like that can help you make like a really big impact on like your decision making. Like you said, like holding yourself accountable. I feel like that's really important when people like the everyday person is like, oh, do I really need this? No, you don't really need it. You already have it, but like you want another one. But I guess like using the most out of what you have, I feel like that's something that you guys have like put a lot of importance on. So I know Lisa, you have to head out in the next few minutes, but we did want to like ask if anybody had any questions for our speakers. This did go by pretty fast. So if anyone like has any questions in the chat, I know like Odessa Hot, she had a question already. But if anybody else has a question, you can just direct message it to me or just ask in the chat. And if not, Odessa, you can just ask your question that you had.
Yeah, I would just, it's kind of a broad question, but I'm curious if you have just one or two thoughts about what the future of sustainable fashion might look like if you feel like we're moving in a positive direction, if you feel like we're moving too slow or not, too fast, or just do you have any thoughts on kind of what the future will look like with sustainable fashion?
If we keep up with, I guess, kind of the trend it's going now, sustainable fashion to me is going to be the new fast fashion, just far more expensive and exclusionary. Fast fashion did not come out of thin air. It came out of our need for more clothes for whatever reason. And, we've all been guilty of it at one point in time. And now the shift is to being more sustainable with this need to be more sustainable and people's only sort of idea of sustainability being tied to consumerism and capitalism. So if it continues down this trend, it will be the new fast fashion, just way more expensive for, just way more exclusionary for marginalized groups, low income groups. And we also cannot leave out plus size people, where a lot of sustainable brands don't cater to them at all.
Yeah, Lisa, do you want to quickly answer this question and then you can head out? I know you had something at one.
Sure, I totally agree with Shanna from how it's looking from a zoomed out lens. And I have seen a few changes happening. You asked if it was happening too fast or too slow, and I think everything in that direction is happening too slow, as far as, it's late in the game. It's not like bad things are coming. It's like, we're here, right? We know where we stand with climate change, and we know how can you tolerate the abuse of the the communities and the workers in this system. It's been going on for far too long. So it's not like, oh, we're going to reach a point and then shift. So in that aspect, I think things are moving too slow. I do think things are being a little bit more linked up. There have been some bills passed recently that are linking some parts of the fashion chain that otherwise were not being held accountable. And those are hard things to link because every country has different regulations. There have been, there was one, something passed in LA for Los Angeles garment workers, which was really amazing recently. So things are happening, but they're kind of small and all over, that it feels too slow to actually have this large, big impact. And that in the larger scale, what Shanna mentioned is happening is that it is the fast part is the fast shift towards an upscale, sustainable fashion being produced similarly to fast fashion, which is a little bit scary.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, I know you have to head out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I hope to see you Richmonder soon. And all of you.
Thank you. So then Alice and Sydney, if you guys want to answer this question, then we have one question from Irene that we'll ask after that, and then we can close off the event.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would mention with this question in particular is I think the main thing that will speed up the change is a push from consumers. So it's supply and demand. So if there's a demand for a certain product, it will be supplied. And so if that demand dries up, then those kinds of front end issues that we've been talking about will dwindle, even the back end post-consumption bit. So I think if there's like a broader cultural shift and change in how we view fashion and consuming fashion, that it's probably the only way that major changes will happen. And part of that is educating the public about what sustainable fashion is currently and what it should be, or where we should be going, and kind of retraining our brains to think about fashion in a different way.
I'll just kind of say echo Alice of, we can kind of help hold brands accountable. There was a story recently about Coach getting called out on TikTok for destroying bags that were being returned. And pretty much as like a direct result of that went pretty viral, I believe that they've created now a program where you can take a used bag into Coach, you can get a credit, and they will work to recycle, reuse those bags into new bags. And so it kind of sucks that they're just destroying things and that's like brands go to. But also good that there is a voice on social media where you can make small progress to doing that. And so I think it's probably just like small steps that are slow, but small is better than none, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess that definitely addressed Erin's question. Did you guys have anything else about like ways that to raise the public awareness of the facts? Like I know, Sydney, you have your website and your Instagram, and Shanna, you have your blog that you're definitely using to kind of raise awareness about this stuff. So if you guys want to quickly talk about that a little bit, and then you can just close off. But yeah.
There is collective power and everyone speaking about it. I think when you talk about going against these massive corporations to get them to stop so much producing, like Alice said, that it's us. We are the ones that created this monster. It is going to have to be us that dismantles it. And every little thing that you do is just one step closer to the overall goal, which is less consumption. I think people think these little itty bitty things that they're doing is not doing anything, but we don't need 1,000 people doing sustainability correctly. We need 10,000 people doing it extremely imperfectly. And that is completely fine. The collective is better than just one person.